Hello, and welcome back. Been a while, hasn't it? Well, quality content takes time to make. I'm mostly joking since I tend to put these off until the last possible moment and just record them all on a Saturday morning. But now that we're here, let's make something cool, shall we? So, we were left off yesterday. Well, it wasn't yesterday, it was like a couple of weeks ago, but last video. We added a ranged animation, a ranged attack, and everything was well. Between the videos, I changed a few variables for the character. I mean, just two. The movement speed and the jump speed, since he was moving and jumping a bit too fast. And now I feel like it's much more natural, but feel free to change them or leave them as they are. But for a quick reference, just go to the character movement component here, and I changed the movement maximum walk speed from I think 300 to 250, and the jump Z velocity from 420 or something to 350. So you can change these or you can leave them as they are. The choice is up to you. As promised, today we will be adding a simple enemy to the game. Now, this is pretty easy to do in Pixel 2D, but there are still a few things we need to take into consideration. So for example, what does the enemy do? How do you interact with it? What are the possible interactions the player and the enemy has? So for now we're gonna keep them simple. We're gonna add an enemy. He's gonna patrol from one collision to another. And if he hits you, he will damage you, and if you hit him, you will damage him, and if you or the enemy take enough damage, one of you will die. So that's pretty simple and self-explanatory. Let's move on to adding the enemy, shall we? Okay, let's close the hero character. Our folder structure is a bit poor right now, so let's do some organization since it's gonna save us time and headaches in the future. So let's create a couple of folders. First of all, it's like a character. Let's move everything that's character related here. Just move here. There you go. I have the better mega arrow. I'm gonna add an items folder. There you go. And for the enemies, I'm just gonna have an enemies folder. Right. So in the enemies folder, right click and create a blueprint class, and as I said, we'll be using a simple AI right now. We're gonna move on to more complex AI in future videos, so just find simple. So if you can find here, there's a blueprint called BP Simple AI Master. So what we'll be doing is we're gonna be creating a child of this blueprint. Select it, give it a name, so basic enemy, and that's a big chunk of the work done here. You're gonna double click it, sorry, it's in my other video, and it just created an enemy based on the default on the BP AI Master blueprint. So as you can see, it already has a couple of components. They're not set up very well right now, but we will be doing that very soon. So if I can just explain how it works, and then we can move on and customize it. So this enemy already comes with a predefined graphics. You can change it or you can leave it as it is, since it doesn't really use any animation blueprints. It's just a simple enemy with a looping movement animation, and when it dies it just explodes, so it doesn't need a death animation either. So we're gonna stick to this right now, and we're gonna move on to more complicated enemies later as mentioned. So if you click on the sprite, you can see that it has the FB mouse sprite. You can change it to any other sprite that you want. We can make it more humanoid, or I have a hellhound sprite right here that seems to be working, but I prefer the rat since it's a simple and easy to understand enemy. So let's move on to I think the right screen. Put it to lit, okay. So what this enemy is programmed to do is it moves from one collision to another. So basically it moves ahead until it collides with a static object or it reaches the edge of a cliff or a ramp, and then it moves backwards until it hits another colliding object or it reaches another end of the cliff, and it keeps repeating. So it has a very simple move pattern, and if it hits the player, then it damages him, and if it gets hit, it takes damage, and if it gets hit enough, it dies. So that's pretty easy to do. Let's see how it works, right? So first of all, this graphic is not properly set, as you can see. Just move it like this so it's fine, and if you can see the arrow, that's basically the forward arrow. So in our case, the graphics is flipped 180 degrees, so let's just flip it. Oh, come on. A second. There. So move it like this. Done. You can check the perspective to see if everything's fine. Yep, everything seems to be working fine. And let's just place him somewhere. Let's place him here, since we can see if he moves from one edge of the cliff to another. At the y put 0. Save current, and let's play it, shall we? Okay, play it. We're gonna move towards the location, and you can see it's moving. It reaches the end of the cliff, it repeats, and so on until basically infinity. So what happens if he hits the player? Oops. What happens here is, well, basically, as I said, it moves until it collides with something, and then it moves backwards. So for some reason it's colliding with the player even though he shouldn't. Well, we can see exactly why. Just go back to the character, and in the hero character you have the capsule component, and the collision presets are set to pawn. Basically, how this AI works is that it does a trace, which basically shoots an invisible beam in a direction and checks for collision, right? And I've added a custom trace response, which is movement, which the rat uses. So basically, our player is currently set to block any movement traces, which means that if the rat hits him, if the rat trace hits him, then it's gonna detect him as an obstacle and change his direction. How we can change this is pretty simple. Instead of pawn, first of all, let's put him to player pawn, since it has a few different collision responses, and then put it to custom and movement. And for the movement, put in overlap. Why isn't it set like this by default, to ask? Well, I can answer. It's a bug, and one that we can pretty easily fix. So we can go and see where we define the player pawn object type and change this so it's gonna change automatically for everything. Let's do that now, shall we? And we're gonna fix a bug with the plugin that's gonna be fixed anyway in the next version, but we can fix it faster. So you can exit, go back to your demo scene, go to project settings, open it, and then you can see in the collision tab, this has a couple of presets, and you can see if you go down here to the player pawn preset, double click, and as you can see, movement is set to block. Just set it to overlap, accept, and close, and I think it should update automatically. If not, it's definitely gonna update once you exit and restart the level. So let's double check, shall we? Instead of custom, let's put it into collectibles, and now let's put it into player pawn, and yes, it updates automatically. So let's save and let's test it out, shall we? Okay, moving here, just gonna wait right here, and technically he should go right through me. And yes, as you can see, the rat went right through me and it doesn't detect me as an obstacle as before. But it doesn't damage me yet. Well, that makes sense because we don't have a health component yet either, so he can't really damage me, right? So let's just do that now.